cold, the rising sun.
Hiya! Penguin Truth here, and it's time for more Otaku Evolution. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and contribute to the Patreon. Now, remember what I asked you to prepare for this week? Nihilism. But is it fair to Black Lagoon to be considered nihilistic? Is Black Lagoon nihilistic or merely cynical in the contemporary sense? Back when I reviewed Violence Jack, I defined nihilism as the belief that things don't have any inherent meaning or value, which can be taken as good, or positive nihilism, or bad, negative nihilism. In other words, positive nihilism defies inherent meaning, but allows for given meaning. Negative nihilism is more like an extreme pessimism. I posited that while perhaps not necessarily nihilistic, Violence Jack was indeed a misanthropic, misogynistic, needlessly cruel, and mean-spirited pile of sadistic garbage. Cynicism, on the other hand, at least in the contemporary sense, not in the classical sense, is basically sourness at the world at large. George Carlin once said, "Scratch any cynic and you will find a disappointed idealist." Cynicism is a distrust as a matter of judiciousness. In other words, the cynic is deeply skeptical of positive outcomes in a life and world that has only crushed their optimism. It can be gathered, then, that the cynic sees distrust as cautiousness, as a defense mechanism. The question I ask, dear viewer, is, knowing all this, can we consider Black Lagoon, the anime, based on the manga by Rei Hiroi, nihilistic or merely deeply cynical? Well, let's look at what it's about before we decide, shall we? Black Lagoon takes place in the southeastern Asian city of Roanapur, a wretched hive of scum and villainy on the beautiful sea. Its main characters are part of Lagoon Company, a band of mercenary couriers and occasionally pirates who work out of a torpedo boat. When we first find our plucky crew, they found a new member in Rokuro Okajima, Rock, who begins as a hostage but becomes a full-fledged member of the crew after proving his worth. Dutch, an ostensibly Vietnam veteran, is the leader of the group. The crew is also staffed with Benny, their mechanic and technical support. But possibly the most dangerous, certainly the most outrageous of the Lagoon Company, is Rebecca Lee, mostly known as Revy.
Kid can kick my ass! I'm not dealing with these demons anymore!
She defeated them all single-handedly. Incredible.
Revy is one of the big reasons I wanted to cover Black Lagoon, and one of the reasons why this series is one of my favorites. She's a fascinating character, badass but kind of psychotic, strong but with deeply held insecurities because of a shattered past. She's complicated. She's kind of like if Oscar Langley Soryu learned how to gunsling. Or maybe if Riley Vincent had a few screws loose. Whatever the case, Revy is a huge draw on the show, serving as a secondary protagonist, but always more proactive than Rock. Her philosophy of life is as cynical, bordering on nihilistic, as you can get.
Yeah, I believed in God right up until that night the cops beat the hell out of me for no reason at all. All they saw when they looked at me was another little ghetto rat with no power and no God. What's left for a poor little Chinese bitch to rely on? It's money, of course, and guns. Fucking A.
Revy has an interesting relationship with the other characters. She refers to Russian mob boss from Hotel Moscow, Balalaika, a complete badass herself, as Sis. She admires the talented triad boss Mr. Chang, and acknowledges his superiority to her own shooting skills. And she has kind of a frenemy situation with rip-off church Sister Edda, weapons smuggler and secretly CIA asset. The two are constantly bickering, but they seem fine with teaming up or just hanging out drinking. But nothing is more fraught and complex as her relationship with Rock. Rock was a Japanese salaryman, trained to bow and scrape his way up the chain, forced to cater to his boss's every whims. When he is basically sacrificed by his superior for some business matters, he discards his old life for a life in dangerous Roanapur, where he believes he'll have more freedom. Revy sees him as somewhat of a novelty at first, but it wears off when he questions her values once, and ultimately leads to a standoff between the two.
Then why don't you become Robin Hood?
It's gotta be better than feeling sorry for yourself. Crying about your hard life.
Shut up! Shut the fuck up, damn it! I'm serious! I'll kill you!
Then do it. Keep chasing your tail like a dog if that's what you want. If you kill me here, then you'll just end up proving me right.
Ugh, that's all I know how to do!
As time passes, Revy becomes increasingly protective of Rock, hinting that there might be an attraction to him underneath her roughness. When they end up in Japan, where Rock is translating for Balalaika, Revy wonders why Rock doesn't just leave his life as a pirate behind and return to his ordinary life in his homeland. Rock counters that he couldn't possibly do that at that point, because he's more suited for Roanapur. He even risks his life disagreeing with Balalaika, causing Revy to panic. Rock assures her that he isn't seeking death, but that, like her, he is already the walking dead.
Go ahead. Off you go and don't look back. You're about to wake up from your nightmare.
Revy, have you forgotten? I'm already dead. I think I died the day I met you.
A character Revy interacts with in the Roberta's Blood Trail OVA, Roberta herself is a whole other story, named Fabiola, has a different take on Rock and Revy's relationship with him. She can see that Rock is starting to fit in a little too well in Roanapur, and maybe he's no longer the good person Revy wants to believe he is, but she probably just refuses to let go of that image. Predictably, this gets on Revy's nerves.
What's it? There's a quality about him that you really admire, but you're afraid that if you dig too deep under the surface, you might be wrong.
Me admire him? You fucking deluded.
You're the one who's deluded. When I look at him, I don't see the guy you keep talking about. I think you don't want to see his true nature, because then you would lose your shining knight.
As time passes, Rock goes from this in-over-his-head everyman, reacting to dangerous people, to being somewhat dangerous himself, albeit differently from the others. The Roberta's Blood Trail OVA showcases this perfectly, with Rock manipulating things just so, in a way that puts people in tremendous danger, but produces results in the end. It's possible that Roanapur is corrupting him, or maybe he was always that way, and the town is just bringing it out of him. But like he says, he's just a bullet, and he needs somebody to fire him. Of course, this also follows an arc where his optimism is crushed by tragic circumstances, so it might just be his reaction to those events. Or maybe a mix of both. I like to think it is, at least, because it makes Rock that much more interesting a character. Revy does want to see him in a certain way, but becomes concerned that that's not how he really is at all.
That mouthy little twit was right after all. You've totally changed. Rock, you've spent too much time in Roanapur. That shithole of a city has messed with your head. Once this job is done, get the fuck out.
What are you talking about? The end is in sight here. It's almost over.
I don't know who the hell you are anymore.
It was fun to transition from Revy to Rock through their relationship. It really becomes the centerpiece of the show after a while. But there's more to the show than just that. Roanapur is interesting because of the careful balance of power in it between all the gangs that control it. There's Hotel Moscow, the Triad, the Italians, and the Colombian drug cartel. The most militant group, of course, is Hotel Moscow, but the Triad is not to be trifled with either. In fact, the only ones that seem to be able to bring Chang to heel is the U.S. government, in this case represented by CIA asset Etta, who's using a voice changer to disguise herself. When something big hits the fan, there's always some commiserating between the powers, especially when it concerns outsiders stepping in their territories. This was the case with the supermaid Roberta, for instance.
I hope you enjoy yourselves.
Similarly, there was the incident with the vampire twins Hansel and Gretel, not actual vampires by the way, Lagoon doesn't really do supernatural, which definitely riled up Hotel Moscow. Then there was Roberta's return to town when her master was assassinated, and the military unit involved was in Roanapur for a different assignment. A lot of different groups got involved during Roberta's bloody rampage. There's always several parties involved in these incidents because power needs to be maintained carefully or things go to pot in the city.
We are more than mere government bureaucrats. Think of the United States as a giant hydra with countless heads snaking all over the world.
You may have the power to make individuals and companies submit to your will, but we have the means to destroy entire countries.
The overarching theme or common element in most of what makes up Black Lagoon is the absolute brokenness of its characters. For as relatively safe as his life was before he came to Roanapur, Rock was forced into a position where he had to be used by everyone around him and came to resent it. Revy, of course, grew up with nothing but resentment because of the terrible circumstances of her childhood, and uses her hostility as a way to fight back against her vulnerability. Hansel and Gretel were used as child sex slaves and snuff film participants and became totally warped about what life and death meant for themselves and others. Even Balalaika, who just wanted to do her nation proud, felt used and abandoned and was forced to harden herself all the more because of it. There aren't a lot of easygoing, well-put-together people in Roanapur. The closest we get are Dutch and Benny, but the two of them are so casual about the use of violence, they probably have a few issues themselves. I think if the series had gone on longer, we'd probably start to see the cracks in their personalities as well. It's too bad the manga is still barely chugging along without an anime adaptation of its latest arcs, because it keeps going on hiatus. But that hardly detracts from the quality of what we have here. And given Hiroi's depression, it's very understandable. I can totally vibe with an author that is as broken as I am. Obviously, you can see the influence of movie directors like John Woo and Quentin Tarantino, much in the same way Cowboy Bebop displayed. In fact, the whole thing has a very Cowboy Bebop-ish feel to it, but with longer story arcs. It may not be as sophisticated, thematically and emotionally as Bebop, nor is it as resonant. Fans of either would enjoy the other pretty easily. It's a lot of tropes and bits and pieces of Hollywood gossamer, but refined into something a lot better than the sum of its parts, so it has both style and substance.
Are you afraid? There's no way you're not. Now witness the awesome power of this.
Shut the fuck up. Didn't you see I wasn't even listening? I mean, were you trying to sell me the damn gun or what?
You fucking coward!
Now it's my turn to talk. Here's some advice. If you can hit your target, pretty much any gun will do the trick. Now that's one to grow on. Say hi to the Fuhrer for me, would ya?
The answer to the question, is Black Lagoon nihilistic or merely cynical, is likely deeply stylistically cynical with little hints of negative nihilism. I don't think it affects the quality of the work, though. At least, that's my own conclusion. I can only hope that someday we'll see more Black Lagoon animated. I've heard good things about later arcs. Maybe I should actually read the manga, huh? If you want to watch Black Lagoon, it's still available on Blu-ray, including the Roberta's Blood Trail OVA, and streams on Crunchyroll.
Yeah, I did. But this wasn't the time, Revy. Maybe someday.
I'll talk about how great the English dub is another time, don't worry. It's awesome, by the way. Next time on Otaku Evolution, something. I haven't decided yet. Maybe you can help me. But I'm sure whatever it is, I'll be going in full bore. Until then, see ya!
Any foes who face the fury of my beloved Sidon will be blown to pieces. God is with me. He protects me. And I am his executioner here on Earth. Now prepare to face the wrath of... Wait!